This is only the beginning. The beginning of what? And he also said, until it is brought back under control. What's it? He has to call back, and if this threat isn't followed by an event, no one will take any future calls seriously. I don't believe that intelligence can be accurately quantified, but I do have an IQ of 187 and eidetic memory and can read 20,000 words per minute. Yes, I'm a genius. Thinking, the vast majority of unsubs with this type of MO aren't driven by the killing. They're merely fascinated by the body parts. Psychologically, they exist in a realm where fantasy meets delusion. It's basically the perfect blueprint for a creation of a serial killer. I'm rambling, aren't I? This amputation was transtibial, but the survivor was transfemoral. Nerve and vascular dissection was careful, well ligated. I mean, this unsub definitely knew what he was doing. I said he wasn't a surgeon, but his knowledge of anatomy and procedure shows definite medical training. You know, the sand in the eyes could be a purely symbolic gesture. The Sandman was a mythical character who would sprinkle magic dust in the eyes of children while they slept.
Yeah, but I thought he was a benevolent figure, a bringer of good dreams.
Not always. In one version of the myth, he would actually pop the eyeballs out of kids to use as food for his own offspring.
Jeez, I stand corrected.
I learn about things all the time just because I want to. Recently, I've been studying up on fungi for no other reason than I love yeast and molds. I think it's because I can relate to them.
You relate to mold?
Well, I learned that fungus is mobile, but it's only mobile because it grows. And I know with myself that my life seems to get better, and I find myself moving into new things as I grow. Which kind of makes me wonder if maybe you're reading about the Galapagos because you can relate to something about that. As a mother, he sees her as a victim, which, you know, theoretically he'd want to protect women. Maybe he blames her because he thinks she abandoned him. Stop by a bookstore and get a copy of Empty Planet. I want to reread it before we talk to the author. I haven't read it since I was 6. Do you mind? It'll only take 10 minutes.
To buy it or read it?
Both, actually. Gives it everything he's got, over and over and over again, and continues to fail. And the whole time they tell him that it's his fault. I mean, it makes sense. Like Ted Bundy, the unsub most likely has antisocial personality disorder and may also suffer from claustrophilia. The glue our unsub used is sold practically everywhere, so we can't isolate point of purchase. A mineral analysis from the sand, however, indicates that it came from the Seneca River in upstate New York. Yeah, it's a book.
Yeah, it ought to be.
No, it's an actual book, a novel. I read it as a kid. It's called Empty Planet by one-hit wonder author David Hansbury. It's got it all, technoids, minutians, all that stuff's in there. It's robots that take over the world once they figure out how to reproduce with humans. Essentially, humanity's lost to technology, and the hero of the book is a 12-year-old boy named Allegro who builds an army and fights for the humans. They're analyzing the sand from both hourglasses now to see if it matches what was put in the victim's eyes. So far, no prints or DNA.
The unsub's careful.
And precise. I calculated the width of hourglass necks with the average grain of sand having a 0.2 millimeter diameter and a volume of 0.0042 cubic millimeters. Given the weight of the sand, that's a gravity flow duration of 3,600 seconds. You know, obviously, give or take a few. Means that he couldn't loosen the tie around his neck, at which point panic set in, and in Ryan's case, it escalated to cardiac arrest. It's called Blue. It's about a girl who thinks she's a real human being, right? But it turns out she's a robot that was built by her uncle.
So it's Pinocchio.
Yeah, it is like Pinocchio, only set in a high school in outer space. Garcia's been digging through William's computer. She found an encrypted link to a web page, an unsearchable, untraceable blog with tons of journal entries. It's like some sort of diary. I was able to differentiate between two distinct voices, two authors. I found various idiosyncratic words, phrases, punctuation, and orthography within the blog entries consistent with each separate person. Words like soda and pop. One guy uses dashes while the other uses ellipses. One side of the discourse made reference to the Devil's Strip. It's a small patch of grass that separates the sidewalk from the street. Now, that term is only used in central Ohio. William lived in Atlanta for 20 years, but he grew up in Columbus. The other guy uses words like turnpike and filling the gas tank, both specific regionalisms for Florida. You know, I'm toying with the notion of either going to the Edgar Allan Poe Shadow Puppet Theater or the reenactment of the 19th century Phantasmagoria.
I don't want to know.
Oh, yeah, you do. Phantasmagorias are these amazing pre-cinema projected ghost shows invented in France where the showman attempted to spook the audience using science magic. And it just so happens that I have an extra ticket. Need access to materials necessary for burning a human body and the space to do so undetected. Ling Chi, it's a form of torture and execution in ancient China. Knives were used to methodically remove portions of the body over an extended period of time, eventually resulting in death. It's all right with you, Dr. Bateman. I'd like to order a few additional blood tests.
Okay.
So a PTT and APTT, along with FDP and creatine kinase, creatine calcium, PO4 and CK serum, as well as a typing screen and electrolytes to start with.
Agent Giroux introduced you as Dr. Reid, but I didn't think you were a medical doctor.
Oh, I'm not. Liz's blood test shows signs of envenomation. Quick onset of symptoms, the mental fog, blurred vision, muscular paralysis, along with vomiting and complete lack of localized swelling and necrosis suggest a neurotoxic venom, maybe from a viperine or something in the elipid family. In fact, the shallow puncture wounds and short bite could indicate a bite from Bitis atropos or Pseudonygia textilis.
English kid?
The Berg adder and the eastern brown snake, neither of which are indigenous to North America. No, not necessarily. The eastern brown snake is the second most deadly snake in the world, but its bites tend to produce a relatively low volume of venom. So while fast-acting and debilitating, its mortality rate's rather low. See, Clark was killed on January 14th, 87 days before his scheduled release date of April 11th. Working backwards and taking into account the 2008-2012 leap year's 3,553 days makes the start of the countdown April 9th, 2004, the exact day Clark began his prison term. 3 hotels in Las Vegas, 260 motels and inns, 1,510 bars, and 2,996 restaurants, not to mention nearby Summerlin, which is growing in popularity.
Well, tourists, though.
Last year, Las Vegas documented 39,727,022 visitors.